So here we are for session 2 of the Bartitsu live sessions. That kind of thing. So right now I'm talking to an empty room, but I'm really hoping that you're listening. If nobody's there in about 10 minutes, I'll probably give up and go have a cup of tea. But hopefully up talking about some of what we talked about last time, introducing some new ideas, and building around it. Now, the Bartitsu Antagonist Forum kind of clearly has two parts. The reasons for this is largely the area. Okay, if I start going into everything we could possibly do, then I would be here for the rest of my life talking. You can't see it. My hand here is now hitting the light fitting. So try to do avoid that. So what we're going to be looking at is much more of the Bartitsu stuff. So we're going to be looking punching, kicking, led to some very, very bad innovation and DIY, which you will get to see later. So there's an incentive for you to stay with. Right, we shall start, as I said, we start every time with, yep. Oh, have I learning from, we are having certain interruptions to both the power supply and the it'll hold together long enough. But anyway, as I said, we shall start with, then we'll fall in. So hands up to the chest, forehead, chest. I use this particular guard, fall in procedure rather, who really put me down the path that's led me to where I am now. My first ever martial arts instructor, and I trained with him for about 2 years. Really kind of into everything that he was teaching. Let's get on with it. He was a very down-to-earth kind of guy. Kind of mentality comes from. The slightly later in my martial arts career, when I'd moved teaching rapier in a couple of towns over, by the name of Mark Donnelly. So he's kind of the other person that I give some kind of homage. That bit really goes much more to him. What he used to do, and I have my sword at guard, the sword comes up to the heart, to the head, a salute to the heavens. So that's where we get the salute from. But for now, all you need to know is we're going to fall in. So officially, actually in the class part. So first of all, up on the screen will get relayed to me Now, Michael is sadly has to go and do wedding-y, coupling-y type things. So I have enlisted a new flea in my ear tonight. Now this does mean that any communication has to go around the world, literally via the States and back to the UK. Please say hello to Susan and be very nice to Susan. Okay. Up exercises, just getting your heart rate, getting used to your heart rate, getting up a little bit, hopefully building. You're all going to be useful for whatever you go on to do. Also, hopefully you've been looking at the first half of the form we looked at last time, just looking at the different ways the movements that we're actually doing. So hopefully if you've done that, you will be feeling much more confident. Right, okay, so what do we want to look at this time? Obviously the first thing I'm going to look at is the second half of the practice at your leisure. Also, we're going to take each individual bit and break it down again. So I'm not just going here with them. The other thing that we'll be looking at is cool downs. So once you've got your heart rate up, you've been through your get them re-attenuated again, kind of back to a normal level so that you kind of reduce the chances of injury. And so that's important, so that's what we're going to be looking at for the second half video today. It's a bit like the classes that I would normally teach. We have 3 rules in. The first of them is don't borrow anybody's equipment without asking. Okay, that doesn't apply right what state anybody else's kit's in. 2, never stand with your back to people who are sparring. Again, it's a safety thing. They will be focused on punching each other, not on whether you are having a conversation with somebody else. That is, don't teach anything that I teach you here to other people. I know that's stupid. So bring them back to me, and then it's only one level of stupid, and at least I have some chance to try and put some kind of the safety aspect mentioned last time. You know your body better than I do. Okay, go at your own pace, do what you can. Do whatever you can, push it as far as you can. You know your body, go at your pace. Okay, if this means absolutely nothing to you, scroll down a little bit, you'll find the first session, go through that and it will explain all of this in more. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So drop step, cross, uppercut. Now hopefully that all looks vaguely familiar to you and is something you feel vaguely with. So I'm going to go through that again, and I'm going to add on the next 2. Drop step, cross, uppercut, fouette, bar, frontal, pack set. From chasse frontal. Again, we're just when you fight, you tend to have your offhand force. When you tended to make or whatever, you tended to earn your living with your right hand. So if I don't earn a living with, so it tends to go forward where it's in. If you get into grappling, things move around a lot. I can't kind of get them in the other stance. Wait a second. Right, now that kind of thing doesn't happen. So you have from either hand. So that's why this form you'll see goes back and forth and covers both sides. So you can actually see that kick coming in across the kneecap, kind of up, down, through the kneecap. That chamber up nice and high, kicking out with the shoelaces, and ideally trying to target the nads. We'll go, opening up this nice area here for you to then send their genitals into their mouth. And if you, that's kind of what we're aiming for with those moves. Now let's move on to what's really the new stuff. So we've come back to guard again after we've done that straight with a drop step. Yeah, that lift in the foot, letting the body to actually deliver some power behind that punch. So the punch itself is just straightening the arm. The power is add more power to it by, instead of just dropping the front foot, dropping both feet. So this time my footwork, I lift both feet and drop. So what that means is, rather than just having 60 all of it off the ground. Very short, very quick way of generating power. But once I'm down here, I have potential energy in terms of going down. So if I raise one leg, half of my potential, I can now drop the second one. If I do both, I'm letting them all go at once, and I'm now out of potential energy. That's fine, that's where things like the uppercut and things come from, where we actually use that kind of rising energy. Options. So what we do after we've done our fouetti, so we come back to guard, and we're going to do a double drop step, drop down, both feet, straight into the solar plexus, fight ends then there. Yeah? Or fighting within the clinch where you're kind of half grappling, half punching, being able to just drop and put that punch in. Now look to your opponent. The next one we're going to look at a hook counter. So what I'm actually going to do is bring my hand right the way over. So my thumb is now pointing at the floor. The reason for the bicep and my arm up here. Yeah? So if I do that facing pretty square on visible above there, which means if somebody is coming in with a big right hook, that's going to slam into my arm here or glance off that side of our head. Okay? Now the other thing this does is I sink my weight down. Okay? So think of this like setting spears against a cavalry charge, okay? Yeah? I don't want to provide the power in this one. let the horse run on, and all of the energy is provided by the horse. In this case, my drop down to my fist as they come in. But either way, it's one of the big things about Bartitsu is to what they call disturb your doing the attack, and suddenly finds they're staggering backwards. It's completely messing with their equilibrium, not when you're on them and you're into your jiu-jitsu and you're tying them up and passing before when someone's quite aggressive and charging in, you set your speed. Your hook counter, the next one, we're going to drop this shoulder a little. This coiled back leg is then going to propel this shoulder forward. Check, shoulder slam, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Ideally into their stomach or solar plexus. So back, I'm going to lower that shoulder slightly and then push off. Almost. Now, that in itself isn't. If body mass is lower than you, you can plough through them. What you're hopefully going to do is hit them, and closing that distance with an attack. They're looking to defend against that, worried about what's coming in. You're going to make contact with them. And back a bit, you're following in, closing that distance, and getting a good hold of them. Yeah? Double drop step, hook counter, shoulder charge, grab. Is everybody following this? Okay, I'm just going to have a quick check and see if anybody's saying. No, it's just people saying hello. Hello, Charlie. Nice to see you again. Hi, James. Are you not seeing any comments? Having a chat with Susan who can't see your comments, which makes this kind of comical, which I do love. Right, she can't see your comments, so everybody doesn't have to be nice to Susan now, so that's fine. Anyway, so as I said, we're going to get that shoulder charge in and we're going to get that grab. The next move is going to make absolute back leg through that gap. If you imagine there's somebody else standing here, I'm moving through that gap. I'll move over a bit so you can see what I'm doing. So hopefully you can see I'm literally coming right onto my tiptoe. So I grab, swing. What I'm then going to do is, for the final part of this, push my hands down as I slam my heel down. I grab, swing through and round, push down with my hands on my heels. And the Sotogaki, which means clearly from the fact we switched to Japanese, we're now, I know it's awful. That is where we come into those kind of jiu-jitsu section. So, in order to explain, to come into a slight improvisation. Clearly in isolation, I don't have a training partner. Training partner for today. This look, pair of legs. Doesn't have a name yet. If anybody wants to name my training partner, this would be a good time. come through into guard. My opponent is in an open guard, meaning their feet. Opponent squaring off against me here. Okay? What I'm going to do from here is step and through the center and put my toe on the ground. Now the important thing, if you imagine a line between my opponent, and what that means is when I slam my heel down, watch what happens to this leg. Yeah? So what I'm doing with my arms, and they go over. So what I'm looking for is I grab my opponent, okay? Going to try it from the other side. There's Does that make sense? I'm sure if it doesn't, people will complain brutally about my use of tracksuit trousers. As you've probably already guessed, we're going to do exactly the same thing, but on the other side. So after we've thrown our opponent down, charge, grab my opponent, foot comes through, hooks round, throw my hacksaw, turn, right, okay, I need a drink, I don't know about the rest of you. You're probably exhausted. So, we've looked at double drop step, the hook counter, generating power by letting our opponent, rather than the uppercut where we looked at the uncoiling of the front leg, yeah? So we're driving through with a different leg. Motion of putting the heel in place and moving from that bent leg to a straight leg with a snap. Once their structure is gone, so if I was the person having it done too, this leg would go over backwards. So if they can get in and my leg just goes, whoa, I'm balancing on one leg. So that's the different ways we can generate power. So we have the single drop step. We've got the front leg rising for the uppercut. We've then got swinging the hip forward down for the coup de pied bas. The frontal, that snap kick, just the straight leg that provides the power. And then on the other side, we've got the double drop step we've looked at today. Extending the back leg, and then looking at that pop once we move into jiu-jitsu to get to the floor. And if you be in a situation where you cannot put force behind whatever else you're doing, okay? So whilst I'm out of range for some reason, staggering back, I can turn that into a lunge, yeah? It's the same. That hook counter, maybe he's really in close and coming in for something like a headbutt. I can use that with a double drop step. So I can then pick the generation method that fits the fight To get an idea of how the whole form looks when we put it together, we start here and let's see how this goes. So, drop step, cross, uppercut, coup de pied bar, frontal, pack, frontal, double drop step, hook counter, shoulder charge, double drop step, hook counter, shoulder charge, step through, back to guard. And that is the first form. Really arrogant of me. I made this form. This isn't some ancient secret handed down from the Victorians. Sitting going, what do I want my students to know about generating power? This is about the feet will automatically do a drop step. And that's what I'm trying to get to, is building that muscle memory. Building muscle memory and then thinking. So you build the muscle memory and then you take each move away separately and look at it delivering. What can I mix round with these to generate a myriad of different attacks? And that's kind of how the first form kind of comes together. So I'm just checking the time there. That's the second form, sorry, the first form in its entirety, and we call that linear power. So it's linear, it's all about generating power, so I cunningly called it linear power generation. Letters that made it sound like it was from a 1960s Batman episode. That is entirely a couple last run-throughs of this form, just so that you can see it. You can work it along with me, whether it's in your head or cross, uppercut, coup de pied bar, frontal, pack sow and turn. Back to guard. Guard. Double drop step, hook counter, shoulder charge, a sotogaki. I'm going to try it once more without talking and see if I can get a bit more. But it should look like that one. Okay, not perfect. I'll be honest, I don't practice and training with other people is better. It is always better to train with people when you can. Which brings in a lot more defensive techniques. Called the square of Savat, because you go around that technique, so it is the square of Savat. Um, come to the section which I like to call Duncan Rambles a Bit. We'll get the full experience of what it's like being in my classes, and I talk a lot. View of Bartitsu. I wanted to talk much more this time about the breakdown between classical Bartitsu and it was taught in Victorian London. To understand what that means, you have to understand, importantly, how people thought it was like in Victorian London. Okay, it's like now. We have to get up to date, okay? But we have coronavirus at the minute. How people are reacting to that situation. And that goes from a sliding scale of some people who don't. You have people that are afraid, that they're actually like sending their dogs to the kennels because they don't worry they're going to. Neither of them really indicate the true situation, which is somewhere in the middle. Okay, you do have gangs wandering around, okay? That's a thing. It still happens now. So people were worried. The other thing that happened is the mass printing press had just started. So now if somebody got mugged on the other side of London, you would probably never hear about it. Now it was in. What it makes you very aware of is how many people are getting mugged, and therefore it gives you an increased fear that it will happen. Whether or not Victorian London was this incredibly, horribly dangerous place or not, to give you an idea, some of the stuff they were coming up with to avoid, particularly the person would come behind you, drop a length of rope around your neck, and literally just strangle you. Alive, but still you lost all of your possessions, or potentially your life. So people were worried about that. Steel collars that were worn under your shirt collar, so that if you got garroted, it couldn't. There's frock coats, and I don't know if you go online and search some of these, they're great. So not frock coats, but your long overcoats. That kind of Victorian women wore. It was like that attached onto a man's jacket, so that apparel for the current coronavirus because it would keep everybody at 2 meters distance. I don't know if the regulations are the same all over the world. That's into your lapel. So you grabbed your lapel, pulled on it, and the small caliber firearm went straight into the ring to go to these lengths. So people were scared. Also, we had this great disparity between and the poor people who had no money but did lots of physical exercise. And it became apparent that the poor people could beat up the rich people and take their money. You know, in less America. So guns are nicking their money. So you start to see things like, at this point, physical culture going toe-to-toe with these ruffians. Barton Wright appears, and he goes, I can take any man, and with as strong as him. And I'll teach you my secret. And really what he was doing was just teaching people basic boxing safely, and then break out the secret jiu-jitsu technique. Granted, thanks to like MMA and Brazilian jiu-jitsu and things. Teaching people. And that's really where Bartitsu had to pay, teaching them how to defend themselves against with the classical Bartitsu. We're teaching those kind of getting close and then using the jiu-jitsu as a secret technique. And people would put on bouts of fighting, whether it was fencing or unarmed or whatever, and Barton Wright would do several of these, or more realistically, his students or the instructors he brought. Obviously, we're in a different world now, and that's where Neo-Bartitsu comes in. On secret jiu-jitsu to win the day anymore. So instead, what we're going to do is martial art. So you'll find that a lot of modern kind of thinking techniques, you start getting the kind of double cross guard for being able to close in properly. There's lots of those kind of techniques kind of coming in. You'll also find a much expanded Savat Bartitsu. That's really been opened up so that you've got a lot more opportunity to use. The standing jiu-jitsu remains largely the same. There's been a huge, bigger emphasis put on a ground game. Now you might, so you need to have something if you end up on the ground. And other than that, there's been an expansion. The same, I always carry these things on me anymore. People tend to have condensed most things either into their phones. None of these are great self-defense weapons. So we have to look at different ways of incorporating that have been brought in that bring you Neo-Bartitsu, which is a Bartitsu core to us. It's definitely self-defense. It's not a sport. Most of what I will teach you will really repetitively do it. People try, these people are wrong. If they're watching this, feel free to come and argue. It is a self-defense thing, and that's really where you've got to take it from. You're not designing yourself to go toe-to-toe Lee or somebody who is a trained killing machine. Okay, what you're looking for is a week and has done a couple of MMA courses. Okay, so you're looking for quick, cheaty techniques. That's why I love it. Anyway, I have waffled on for a long time now. Let's get on to looking at cooldowns, which was the other thing I wanted to talk about. And that little bit of form I am warm. Partly that's because my missus is now working from home frequently, and hopefully you can find them useful for your own cool downs. Okay. Giving it a pretty normal kind of just loosen off will work, and that's fairly intuitive. So instead and then push my elbow towards my other shoulder, and that will stretch all the way along kind of through my for about 5 seconds or so, just so the muscles get a chance to stretch out, and then when you release them, they'll final point, and then just letting them settle back into where they want to be. Your breathing's returning to normal and your heart rate's coming down, which is again taking. Once we've got the tricep, you're going to put your hand on your own shoulder. I'm wearing so on the shoulder, you're going to put your hand, handling it towards the fireplace behind me, and it's going to stretch all of there. And then again, reasonable amount of stretch on that one. Fingertips, palms to the ceiling. Oh, no, there we go. Pushing my arms up, my back straight. So once I've done that, I'm going to just go a little bit apart because it's more comfortable. If you're happy to put them together, it puts on a deeper stretch. I'm not. Hands are going down, and I'm just pushing everything towards the floor and then through my legs so that I get expanded. And if I want to, there's nothing to stop me repeating these a few times. Just out that core front and back. Okay, that deals with your abdominal muscles and the hands behind, and you're just going to twist them over so your palms are facing towards the small of your back. My sternum 45 degrees up from my body. Her body is now relatively well stretched. You see my hands doing this the whole time I'm talking. My arms get quite a workout on a daily basis all the time I'm moving. My legs don't get to see that much action, especially now I have to walk from. When I've been doing a lot of kicks and stuff, I really like to focus on stretching the legs out. So some good ones are doing a lunge. So from here, these little gi pants that I wear, I want to try and get a 90 degrees bend in that front leg. The back and everything facing forwards. So I'm not kind of sideways, very much forward, twisting the hips, so you get over onto the ball of the foot and push the knee down so it's almost touching the floor. That's just kind of stretching out there. Once you've done that, you're going to put it down actually on the floor. I'm actually going to put my hands on the floor and stretch, and the idea is to kind of open out this area here and stretch through the Once I've done that, I'm going to go to the other side. Again, whoop. Over onto the ball of the foot, halfway down. Once I'm happy with that, onto the floor. That gives me kind of a basic kind of stretch along the inside of here that tends to get all. Need to stretch the calves more. If you put your foot sideways and your foot out forward and touch your toe now, you will feel that all the way down the back of your leg here, particularly on ones that are worth looking at. There's a couple of floor exercises. So we need to be sitting down. I'm trying to touch my toe. The problem is if you say touch your toe, everybody bends their back and leans forward. So what I'm going to focus on is trying to push my sternum to touch my toe. So rather than bending over, I'm once I'm happy with all of that, into the middle, feet together, close up to you as you can get. Just stretches out through that groin region that can get really tight. Once you've done all of that, just move everything so any built up, all of your muscles are getting moved, nothing's tight. Your weight will have come down, all of your muscles have kind of been stretched out. The whole process of, but if you were looking at Bartitsu as a fitness activity, press-ups, sit-ups, squats. You've got your form. Shown you there. You have done about recommended daily amount of exercise. Great. Okay? If you get nothing else, the warm-up and the cool-down will allow you to train safely. And everything we're going to go on to talk kind of cool down afterwards. I'm going to do these off screen because nobody wants to sit and watch me do that every week. Problem is you need to work on that. But in reality, those will keep you safe, and they will starting to build you those muscle memory, and it's starting to get you used to those kind of movements that we're actually going to use when we come to. If you want some homework for this week, do your warm-ups, 3 of them again. Try to running on the spot for 2 or 3 minutes, 10 push-ups, 10 sit-ups. Then you're going to catch your breath, and then you're going to go through those stretching exercises I just looked at now. Okay, if you can do that 3 times over the next week, work on is learning that form. Okay, so drop steps, crosses, uppercuts, everything we looked at last. Shoulder charges, all of that stuff we looked at today to learn that first form. Okay, practice that as well. It will stand to look at in future sessions. Right, I'm going to have a quick check. Oh, can you see these now? Cool. Hey, Susan's back with us. Thanks for further abuse, which is my preference. So, everybody is good. If anybody does have questions, just finding down here. So, where are we going to go from here? Looking at, as I said, the Savat kickboxing side of things. So we're going to be looking much more at kick at the medium height, the coup de pied bar, which is that low line stomping kick, and out towards the waist level. Next time we're going to be looking at a lot more kicks on the BAF and the side kick. What else are we going to look at? I'm sure there's other ones in there as well. But we'll look at the first hand blocks for when you're blocking against kicks, as well as actually some blocks with your legs against your repertoire, as it were, of moves. And the other thing I want to then look at is spend the other half of the form. A form is a string of moves that are easy to practice. A combo is an actual useful series of moves that you would actually use straight cross. Yeah, a couple of range finding little hits followed by a big hit when you're happy you're going to land it. Yeah. Followed by a front kick, followed by a cross as you come down. Yeah, again, it's just that high, take the attention low, and then reform is teaching you a string of letters. It's your alphabet. It's teaching you the moves. Paragraphs, chapters that are basically fights. That's the way we're going to approach it. Those combinations. So that's what we're going to be looking at next week. Hope you'll come back and join me for that. Other than that, that I've just talked about, and I think that's really everything I've got to say. So again, I'm going to be wrapping up a few minutes early. So we shall finish up, and we finish up that same movement, but this time after the punch we're going back to an class. So from attention and full. Thank you all for putting aside some time. I hope it's been useful. For those of you who are watching and digesting and and you want to ask in a more private setting, just are trying any of this stuff and you're like, oh, this hurts every time I better. You might come up with a, but I do this and not open what the options are. I'm more than happy to discuss this as long as you want to. Of ramblings in the future, feel free to suggest that as well. Otherwise, I will just continue. I don't know, the Peaky Blinders, and want to know what all of the story was around them, let me know, I'll fill you in. The Scuttler, Jack the Ripper, whatever takes your fancy, let me know. Otherwise, I will just pick things that kind of tie in. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you had a good time. I enjoyed myself, and hopefully take care and be kind, okay?